Hey, it's Chris with Just for Flips. We are getting ready to launch the third video in our notes series. Today, we're going to talk about purchasing notes. So if you're kind of just getting, you got an email about this as a reminder that, hey, I'm putting on this series. The first video, which is back there and you can watch it, is about doing notes as hard money loans. And I talked about that because I'm a hard money lender. I also shared with you my note and deed of trust and business arrangement that I have with my borrowers. Then we jumped into part two. Also, you can go back and watch that. We talked about gap funding, and why I wanted to talk about gap funding is kind of no money down into fix and flip real estate, but in the sequence of loans, your hard money lender was in first position that we talked about in video one, and then your gap funder also saying that yes, you can do deals with friends and family that are going to give you gap funds, but it's always good to do the paperwork and record the deed of trust and the note, and then that person would be in second position. And as we talk about buying notes, we just want to talk about lien position, first being the hard money lender, second being the gap funder. We're going to get a little bit more in talking about lien position as well. So a note is obviously just a promise to pay, and actually the note is kept with you, the lender, and then something else is recorded at your county assessor, which is either a deed of trust, if you're in a trust deed state, or a mortgage if you're in a mortgage state. Now the difference is on a deed of trust state, the deed of trust gets recorded, and to foreclose you go through a foreclosure sale, versus if you're in a mortgage state, you have to go through a judicial foreclosure, and judicial foreclosures just like are generally longer and more expensive, and that's going to play in a part of, do you want to buy the note? So understanding that is also super important. So obviously, when you're buying notes, it's just a way to get cash flow. So, and I'm going to talk about kind of a new way that we're structuring notes right now and how to basically get in notes with no money. Everybody likes the notes with no money game, but it's all about the cash flow. So as a lot of people, a lot of note buyers, you'll see a friend of mine that does notes says he's not a landlord, he's a lien lord, right? Because with landlord and being a landlord, you have the T's, right? The toilets, the termites, the taxes. With a lien, you're just the bank. You're just collecting the payments over and over. Very similar, as a rental, you collect payments. You can just get that phone call where you're the lien holder, you're just the bank, and you just get the checks. There are no calls for the toilets and the termites. So that definitely changes what I think is really, truly passive income. As you grab the note, whether you're buying it, you can actually buy the note from other people, or then you can sell the note. So I'm just going to give you kind of an example of some notes that we're creating right now. So I'm going to do a little screen share. I'll probably throw this up on a reel as well, but I'm just going to jump over to screen share, do the whiteboard, and hit share. Now this is something that I'm practicing like in everyday today's world. So I'm going to just say there's a wholesale deal. I just doing the whiteboard. I don't have the little touch pen. I'm using my fingers, so it's a little scribbly. So we got our wholesale deal for $100,000, right? Now, if you've been in the business a little bit, you probably have that friend, that private money guy that's, likes his passive income as well, where you can maybe get 100% financing for him, and you have your wholesale deal. I'm just going to write up wholesale up here, right? Wholesale, probably not be doing this with my finger. Wholesale deal for $100,000. We grab it. Now it's worth $150,000, but it's a little older, it's dated, but it's perfectly livable. It's clean. It's not down to the studs. It's nothing crazy like that. Well, we can grab that from our private money lender. Once again, we're going to put the note and the deed of trust, which this whole series is about, in place, or the note and the mortgage if you're a judicial state. I'm a I'm mainly doing a business in Arizona. I do a little bit in Florida, which is actually, I get the benefit of doing a judicial state and a deed of trust state, so I can understand them both. So I grab a $100,000 mortgage and we sell that on a land contract for $150,000, right? So we get $150,000. We basically did no money, put no money into the deal. We went and got our $100,000 from our private money guy. So I'm going to put the PM for the private money guy, right? And we sold it on our land contract for $150,000. Now we got 10% down. So I'm going to put $15,000 down, right? And now the balance we can take as a second position deed of trust. So just like our gap funder was in second position, now we can be in second position because we sold this on a land contract. We took our $15,000, which is kind of our, whether it's our commission or our wholesale fee, we're getting some active income out of this deal right now. But then we also get some passive income because we have a $35,000 second mortgage. Now, when we sold this deal at 9%, typically people that can't qualify you can generally get 2 to 4% above the going rate. So if the going rate right now is, I'm just going to say it's 6, it's almost May 2023. Mortgage rates are kind of bouncing around that 6%. So we can get between 8 and 10 for what we call our penalty box buyer, people that don't qualify. Maybe they had a bankruptcy or they're in a divorce situation, someone missed a payment, the credit doesn't work. But I'm just going to use, we sold it at 9%. Okay. So the whole $135,000 is getting 9%. But, our wholesale, we bought our wholesale deal. We had our private money guy that likes to be in the wholesale business, and he gave us our $100,000. And we might have got that in more expensive money, like, 12 or 11. Well, we talked to our private money guy and say, hey, we're going to sell these off once they do it. So now we're going to sell a note. So this person with the $100,000 private money guy, and now we've got our buyer in place at the $150,000 at 9. Well, now, we can basically sell that note at 9%. And that's what's great about buying and selling notes. So we sell that note for $100,000 to that note buyer who just wants his 9% return for the rest of the term. And let's just say the average owner lives for 5 years. So he's going to sit there and collect his 9%. That's 9% on $100,000. That's $9,000 a year divided by 12. That's, right around what? 7 and change a month. Let's call it $750. I don't know. I'm just doing math in my head. So that we could sell that off to, a business professional that just, likes to put their investments in 9% money. Doctors, lawyers, people that have IRA investment funds, that kind of stuff. So, that's that side of the equation. Now, us as, the active investor that knows how to do this, we just generated ourselves a $35,000 note at that same 9%. And guess what? We didn't even really have any money in this deal. So that's what's called an infinite return, right? No money in the deal. So now we're creating notes. But let's just say this guy puts his $100,000 in at 9%, and he wants out 2 years down the road, 3 years down the road. That's when we can also sell that note. Now, what's great about that, and I'm going to reference this situation during this whole process, and I just wanted to start there, and I'm going to reference back to this situation right here. So let's dive a little deeper in the actual buying of notes. So when you want to buy a note, you want to do 3 things. The 3 P's. It's the paper, the property, and the payer. So when we're talking about the paper, we're talking about that 9% interest rate. When we're talking about the property, obviously you want to do an evaluation on this property. So on that particular example, it's a $100,000 note, right? At the time, it was just an average property that was sold at 150, and maybe it's 2 years down the road. But maybe that person's gone in and, cleaned it up a little bit, done some repairs and maintenance. Maybe they've added a pool, maybe they've closed in the garage and added more square footage. You don't know. Obviously, you need to go do your due diligence and take a look at the property. Now, obviously, maybe they have trucks on blocks out front and there's just trash all over the property. Well, then maybe you would buy that note at a discount. But we're going to talk discounted notes in a different section, so we're just going to focus on buying notes right now. So I'm going to just say, hey, it's a $100,000 note. It's 2 years down the road. It's clean, grass is green, white picket fence, everything looks good with the property. Now we could look at the payer of the note when we want to sell this note. So obviously if it's being serviced, this is beneficial because the servicing company will have, okay, how have they been paying over the last 2 years? Have they been paying late? Has it ever gone 30 days late? Stuff like that. So we're talking about 3 P's: the paper, the property, and the payer. The next item is, I need to backtrack on that. So if it's not with a servicing company, maybe it's just with the owner. Well, if the owner is taking just like cash, just like a restaurant can take cash versus, having it all run through credit card and having, exactly how much the company is making or the restaurant is making. Same thing with a rental property. If the owner of the note is taking cash and not recording it, well, that's going to make his note more difficult to sell because, when he goes to sell the note, they're going to want to go, well, I want to see the payment. Well, if it's in cash, the note buyer may not necessarily like that as a saying that they're getting their payments in on time. So, one other thing you want to look at when you're talking about buying a note is what state is it located? We talked about judicial foreclosure states and deed of trust foreclosure states. Well, a judicial foreclosure is a lot longer. In some cases, it can take 90 days to foreclose versus like in Arizona, it's a deed of trust state. It's like 90 days to foreclose. You go to Texas, it's even faster than that to foreclose. So, knowing a judicial or non-judicial state and their foreclosure proceedings is also definitely beneficial. We talked about payment verification and owner records. And then when also buying a note, you can definitely, if that 9% isn't a number that you're looking for, you can also, like I said, offer a little discount on the note. So if you're trying to get a 12% return, if you have one of those cool little old Hewlett-Packard calculators that used to be around, but you can calculate, for instance, how long is left to pay on the note, what interest rate you want besides the 9% on that example. If maybe you want 12, you take the number of payments that are left on the note, you calculate the interest rate at 12%, and then you can calculate how much you would actually pay or maybe offer on that note as well. So that can also help you get a little bit better of a yield. But when I'm talking about discounting notes and distress notes, I'm going to talk about that later in the next episode. Now, once again, as a note holder, you're not going to get access to the property. You're buying the note. You're the bank. You don't get to go do an inspection or anything like that. So like I said, do it in a state that's foreclosure friendly, because if you own the note and things go bad, your only access is recovering on the property. Now, if you buy a note in Phoenix, the foreclosure business is very active. I've been in the foreclosure business for 21 years. If you buy a discounted note or a note that even has, not a discounted note, but if you buy a note that has equity, generally, stuff at foreclosure sales bids to like 80%. So you're going to recover all your money, so you're going to get your note principal back, your back interest, and any foreclosure fees that you may have on it. Now, when we talk about ballooning, that's gonna be a question that people are asking. Well, can you do a balloon on the note? Well, Dodd-Frank kind of doesn't like that, because if you do a balloon, it looks like maybe you're trying to recover the property. So Dodd-Frank really doesn't like to do ballooning notes, especially on residential housing. So I would kind of stay away from that for sure. So that's kind of the note process and buying the note. We can, like I said, if you can buy the note at the standard rate, the 100 grand to 9%, that person had it for 2 years. They don't want any more. Would they be willing to sell it to you? Maybe the principal is down to 97 or 95 at that 9%. Would you want to jump in? Now, if you're looking for note buyers, I always say networking is probably the first place to start. But then you can jump into, there are Facebook forums of people that buy and sell note on Facebook forums. Mortgage servicing companies probably are a good place to network with because they service a bunch of notes. So they may have a note selling service. And then obviously there are note companies out there, but they're going to definitely want to buy that note at a discount. So also when you do your note, definitely you want to look into the state you're buying. For instance, I know this from the foreclosure days in Las Vegas. Halfway through the foreclosure or the financial crisis, Vegas made a deal that if you couldn't produce the original note, you couldn't foreclose. So you had all these houses out there because, as banks generate notes, or generate mortgages, they were packaging up and selling them to this servicer and then selling them again. I mean, if you've been in the business or even just borrowed money on your own house, you start with this bank and then 6 months later you're with somebody else, and then maybe 2 years later you're with somebody else. Well, in Vegas, if you couldn't generate that original piece of paper that they signed with the blue ink, so original copy of the note, the original note, not a copy of the note, you couldn't foreclose on the note. So they had to work that out. And but there were houses literally in Vegas that were 6 years and 7 years in foreclosure, and they couldn't actually foreclose on the houses. And kind of a funny story, people would actually go buy HOA because it wasn't also getting paid, and they would buy the note on the HOA, and then they would actually have possession on the house, even though the HOA is behind the bank. They go buy the HOA for a few $1,000s and start renting the house because they actually grabbed a lien position and had some ownership and could rent it until, the actual bank, foreclosed them out. Kind of a funny story back in the day, but yeah, you could buy a HOA lien for $3,000 and then start renting the house for $1,200 a month. But once again, little trick in the business. So that's it about notes. You definitely know about the state. And then also, you can use a purchase and sale agreement for a note. I'm going to add it to the Just for Flips asset section. So if you go to Just for Flips, you become a member and just go to the asset section. Doesn't cost you anything to become a member. Go to the asset section, and then there's a purchase sale agreement for the note. And basically the note, it's just like a purchase and sale agreement for the house. You're saying, hey, I'm buying this note. Here's the principal amount of the note. Here's the borrower of the note. All the information that you need. And yes, you're gonna want to go through title. And also when you go through title, when you're buying a note, also when you originate the note back on that in our examples on the whiteboard, you want to make sure you get title insurance. And there's two different kind of titles insurance. There's just a basic policy of title insurance on a note, and then there's a title policy that follows the note through the sales process. So as my hard money lender, I might originate a hard money loan today, and I might sell it next Monday. But the title insurance I make the title company get insures me on the purchase, but it also insures my investor when I sell it next Monday. So it transfers with the note. So if you're originating notes in this first and second position, like I just showed you on the whiteboard, you want to make sure you get the right title insurance so that when you sell a note down the road, or even if you wanted to sell your second down the road, you can transfer that title insurance with it. All right, so there's your class on buying and selling notes. I hope you enjoyed it. We'll be back next week talking probably about purchasing discounted notes. Thanks again. See ya.